All right off the bat, I want to say congratulations to our intelligence community, CIA, which led this effort to take out the leader of Al-Qaeda, who was a 9/11 mastermind. I'm glad he's dead. He deserved to be dead. He's got the blood of thousands upon thousands of Americans on his hands. But it is concerning about where he was killed. You cannot take out. I mean, the fact that it's from people like Lindsey Graham to Lisa Murkowski, everyone is questioning. Everyone's grateful that the CIA was able to do this work. And I agree with President Biden that when we have these enemies like this, we hunt you down until you are dead. It doesn't matter how long from the event. But the fact that he was back in the capital of Afghanistan, in a senior Taliban leader's home, gathered with his family, outside on a porch. This is a guy who for most of his life has been had to hide in a cave somewhere between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and he felt comfortable enough in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan to not just have movements around the city, but to actually move back to the capital and hang out on the porch.
I mean, if you're in such a prominent position back in your family's home, back sitting on the balcony, don't tell me that the Taliban didn't know he was there. They obviously knew that he was there, that he was flourishing, and that he was in the community, and that he was doing hiding or doing additional terrorist work, which used to be a surgeon, an interesting thing, but is continuing to do the work that he is really cut out to do, and that's being a terrorist. So it does seem to me that the great victory that the president is touting is somewhat tempered by the fact that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are still working together.
We knew that the Taliban, one, was, again, not a partner you can work with or trust, but now, two, we see that they are providing a safe haven, not just to some random Al-Qaeda members, by the way, to the number one leader of Al-Qaeda since 2011 when Osama Bin Laden was killed. Al-Zawahiri takes over, and he feels comfortable enough in a Taliban-controlled Kabul after the U.S. withdrawal.
We'll play some clips because this is from a specialty series. We did a 10 episodes, like 5 hours long. If you want to go watch it, series that you can binge through. It's available, like I said, on YouTube or on aclj.org/Taliban. It'll take you directly there. We had some great guests. Again, we had people you've heard on this show before, Rick Grinnell, Wes Smith, but then Mike Pompeo, Representative Waltz, James Lankford, John Ashcroft, Attorney General. We go way back and talk about the history of the war on terror. Nikki Haley, obviously you and our dad, Jay Sekulow, and Tulsi Gabbard. So you can go take a look at that whole series. But we talked a little bit about the destruction and then the resurgence of not just the Taliban, because that was obviously what we were talking about a year ago when all of this started happening. We're almost right at probably a year since the Taliban, or since the Afghanistan withdrawal happened sometime in early August. Why would you think this would be a mistake for the U.S. and the UN to recognize the Taliban as a legitimate government?
Well, the U.S. should not ever want to work with the Taliban because the Taliban is the one that allowed Al-Qaeda to make its moves on 9/11 and have over 3,000 people die because of it. When you look at these terrorist groups, they all stick together and you can't take their word for it. And I think we see that. We see that in the fact that women are no longer allowed to work in government. They've taken girls out of schools. They're doing forced marriages again. They've got dead bodies hanging in the streets to show what will happen if you don't listen to them. That's not a government we should ever want to recognize. And it's certainly not a government that you want to give money to. And when they talk about recognition at the UN, what that means is aid to the Taliban. So we don't want to give aid to the Taliban. That's just not an option that we should ever have on the table. And we should never think it's about working with the Taliban. We couldn't work with them before. We can't work with them now. It's never going to be an option. So we've got to figure out another way to get hold of this and figure out how we're going to get a fighting force there that's not Americans necessarily, but to find out an allied contingency that we can go to start getting a hold of the terrorist movements that are happening.
They didn't alter. They're not different. They are what they are. And the supposition and the belief on the part of the Biden administration that you can reset in Afghanistan with the Taliban now in control and that disastrous withdrawal having been put behind us and reset with them, and they're not a haven, is ridiculous. The idea that al-Zawahiri can be in the midst of them sitting on his balcony, is known to the Taliban leadership, known to the senior aides. I mean, the idea that they are somehow changed or altered, or that they have now seen the light and they can live in a civilized society in a civilized fashion is ridiculous.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Taliban, quote, grossly violated the Doha Agreement by hosting and sheltering al-Qaeda's top leader. Yeah, because you can't make agreements with the Taliban. You can come up with, if you know, in the moment, if you got to deal with issues, that's one thing. But long term is we should be taking out their leaders too. I mean, I don't know why we let them thrive. Why not take out all the Taliban leaders? We know. I mean, al-Zawahiri is in there in the Taliban leader's house. That's who housed the head of al-Qaeda. He said, "Come to my home in Kabul. I'm so unconcerned about you getting my family, hurt, that you can come live in my place and come reunite with your family." And great job, CIA, great job, U.S. Intel, but wow, what a change.